At Arizona State University, we've made online education better, smarter, and more personalized so you can go further in your aspiring field.
I decided to pursue medicine once I realized that ASU did have the online program for biological sciences. You're still required to learn the same curriculum. You're still being tested on the same content that anyone would be tested on in person. The comprehensiveness of the program prepared me so well for medical school.
Explore over 300 programs at asuonline.asu.edu.
Virtual town hall. Look forward to it as we've. Salute. Okay, three amigos here tonight. Good to see you guys. And a special guest is Jennifer Gross, and you're using the right mug. You shouldn't drink anything out of anything but an OPN mug. And. And we're going to get you one of those too, Jennifer.
I want one. I like the back. I like the red, white, and blue side. That's pretty.
There you are. Hey, how's it going tonight? Happy. Well, I was going to say Happy Father's Day, but that doesn't apply to you. But it does apply to these three hideous-looking people here. Put the thumb up thing too. All right, let's. Man, I was on vacation. It feels weird coming back. You're one of the. Cream of the crop there in the state representative. So we really appreciate you coming on here tonight.
Too kind. You're too kind, Joe.
All right, we're going to look at let's start off with the House budget, if you don't mind. Can we? Should we start with that? And
not at all.
Now, let me fill me in here because I'm not like the most knowledgeable, but it's still a ping pong match, right? The House and the Senate, you guys are still arguing about what's going to be in there, but you are losing time. Because it's got to be done by the end of the month, right? So you don't have a whole lot of time there. Let me show you a picture here, Jennifer. So you get a kick out of this. But this right here is that's your bill. Yeah. It's like look at the size of that thing, guys. Look at how big that bill.
300 last time I looked.
Unbelievable. Over 5,000. So. I mean,
is that the budget?
That is the budget right there. It's ready to break that table. See, it's just
and look at
they had to reinforce the table. Now
that's legal size paper too. That's not 8x10.
Oh, that's legal size on top of it. Woo! Yep. All right, so it's crazy. Let me just ask you a practical question on that. I mean, did you actually read that? Do all the state reps actually read that, or is it? It's kind of like the federal government where they say, "Oh, let's just pass it so we know what's in it," type thing. But you don't have time to read all that. Yeah, is a lot of it the same from like the previous budget? It's got to be, right? That can't be all new material there. Yeah.
Correct. So that the people, before we go any further, if they want to find out the comparison between the House version, the governor's version, the House version, and the Senate version, there is a comp doc at LSC. So if they go to lsc.ohio.gov/asset/legislation and or comparison, they can also look for HB 96-comparison-document. They will be able to find what we're going to talk about a little bit here so that they can see the comparison document between the governor's version, the House version, and the Senate version.
Well, can you give us a cliff notes on that, maybe, if you would like to? What are some of the major differences right now that you guys are arguing about?
Well, I a lot of the changes that I put in for Medicaid did not make it in the Senate version. They kept a few of the good things, but like one of them is we have private rooms for Medicaid patients. So if you guys needed to go into Medicaid, if you're over 65 and you needed to go into a nursing home on Medicaid, you would automatically, if you're on Medicaid, get a private room. But if you're paying cash, it's going to be, you most likely would look at your budget and go, well, if we could have a semi-private, we could save $3,000 a month. So let's try to get a semi-private room. This was done in the last budget under Speaker Stevens, where he gave private rooms to every Medicaid patient. I have an issue with that because I feel like that should not be the case. So if you're on Medicaid, it's don't pass go. You don't pay, you go straight to private room. Whereas people like us who are trying to save our pennies, we look for the semi-private because it's cheaper. And
well, wait a minute. That's interesting, but again, it doesn't seem like it makes a lot of sense to me. So what you're saying is, if you're on Medicaid, you get yourself a room. You're the only one in there, a private room, and everything like that. But if you have a higher income or something like that, then you're
on the backs of the taxpayer.
Yeah, that's the other thing too. It's on our back. This is just that's why Medicaid is the largest item on the budget. And you're part of that committee that's kind of looking into all that, right?
That's right. That's absolutely right. So there were several things. They took out a lot of oversight on the Medicaid program, which is 51% of our state spend. And that includes, we talked a little bit about this last month, which I cannot believe a month has gone by since we spoke last, but we draw down money from the federal government. So we found waste in Medicaid that was under a constituent actually in Representative Davila's district. He gave that information to Representative Davila, who did not share it with me until it became a big deal. And so Davila's been on Breitbart and all of that kind of stuff. And now Davila has put in some amendments into the budget, but one of the amendments that he has, I already had, and that is cross-checking in multiple checkpoints for income. What we know is that asset verification has been lacking in Ohio. So in that, I think you had Davila on, but just to recap, we found 4,000 people that are in the aged, blind, and disabled category in Ohio that have $100,000 to up to $1 million in assets. That should not be, because in order to be on Medicaid, you should have less than $2,000 in assets. And so, and then
he was bringing that on, and he's becoming very famous, like you said. He's been on Breitbart, he's been on Fox News, I think, or One American News, whatever. But how does that oversight happen, Jennifer? How is it that somebody can be making $1 million and not get caught and they're on Medicaid? I mean, you got to fill us in on that.
What we know so far through the letters through Davila and through the Department of Medicaid is that we had a subcontractor, which is a company you may have heard of, LexisNexis, who found and did the confirmation for income. And then they let Medicaid know when we asked Medicaid if they had removed these people, they could not answer that. So we obviously have a case where government is inefficient, shock of all shocks, and they did not remove these people. And that inflates our numbers, inflates waste, inflates spending. So now we have an issue, now we know, and so we're going to try to move forward with really tightening that up. The other thing the Senate did is they took away prior authorization in Medicaid. That would save us 5 to 7%, like in medications alone, that's 5 to 7% of $6 to $7 billion a year in our medication that we spend. So to take away, I know people don't like prior auths, and providers don't like prior auths, and patients don't. But when the taxpayer is paying and we can save 5 to 7%, we need to do that at such large numbers. So those were some things the Senate removed.
Now, one last thing on that with Mike Davila, he was saying that he found what did he say?
$6 billion.
Yeah, $6 billion.
$6 billion. Now, that is state and federal spend.
Okay.
So the reality is the state portion of that is 1.5 to 2.4 billion approximately. Don't quote me on that number, because the rest of that is savings to the federal government because it's waste in Ohio. So, I mean, I inherently knew. That's why I drove so hard for transparency. And,
one thing I saw on that One American News, because I did watch the interview, some of it with him. But they were he was being interviewed by Matt Gaetz, and Matt Gaetz is saying, well, probably because it's federal money, Ohio doesn't want to investigate it too heavily because then they would get less federal funds. Now, I don't know all the intricacies of all this, but that just seemed like
it's up to 2.4 billion. It's up to 2.4 billion in state money. So that when you think about, I believe that with property tax and the issues, I think we need about 3.5 billion to really dramatically reform our property tax. If you put 2.4 billion and now you're down to 1.1 billion, that brings property tax into line of sight. Definitely we can do dramatic change. But you guys know, I know you know, even without Davila, even without this, I mean, I wish that his constituent was in my district because I'm chair of Medicaid. But the fact of the matter is, you inherently knew there was waste in a big program like Medicaid. But until I got there, everybody would just say, well, there's nothing we can do with Medicaid. There's nothing we can do with Medicaid. If I have done my job as chair of Medicaid, and I'm going to take a little bit of credit for this with Davila, I'm the one who said, look at Medicaid. Look at it. You have got to look at this. When it's 51% of our budget, it is irresponsible for any legislator to just say, talk to the hand. I don't know anything about that. And it's also irresponsible to say, well, Jen Gross is the head of it. She's responsible. That's not true either, especially with term limits and knowing I just became chair in January. But if I've done my job, I've shined a light on Medicaid. I've shined this light, and together as a team, because I can't do it all, we will move forward for the people of Ohio to increase efficiency. I would tell you that JMOC, the Joint Medicaid Oversight Committee, should be the DOJ. We should have a separate DOJ overseeing Medicaid alone. And the problem is the director was not transparent and hasn't been. And the Senate removed some of our transparency effort in our budget. So I sent a letter to the Speaker with some of my concerns about the Senate budget, and I hope that they'll fight for that. But because I voted against the budget overall, I hope the Speaker, who was happy with my work, I hope that he'll support and defend some of my suggestions for Medicaid, not for me, but for the people of Ohio and for the betterment of our system as a whole.
I'm going to let these guys chime in here for a minute. Just on Medicaid, let's just stay on Medicaid for if you guys have anything you want to ask her about that. Brian, Jonathan, any question on that?
Yeah, I've got a quick question, if I may.
Okay.
Or Jonathan, go ahead. If you've got something, go ahead.
All right. So I want to put this in a sort of a context I think everybody should be able to get their head around. I periodically look at my bank statements. Actually on a regular basis, but every once in a while I sort of skim through, like, where's the money going? And I don't know about everybody else, but a long time ago we switched to streaming services. I'm not a big fan of smart TVs, so I have these little devices called Roku, and it's really easy with Roku, with a push of a button, to add another channel. And those channels, sometimes they're inexpensive, there's teaser amounts, but they stockpile, and every once in a while it's like whack-a-mole. They stockpile, and these monthly fees add up. And every once in a while, I'll go on there, like some channel I've never heard of. We watched one documentary a couple of months ago or something, and they're charging $16 a month or whatever it is for this ongoing, recurring thing. The lunacy of this entire conversation seems to me, in that context, when you're talking about our state and federal government expense, of like saying, oh, look, I looked through my statement, and here's this $16 expense that I don't really need, and it's not appropriate, and I don't want to spend it. But I don't know. Maybe we should just keep it there. Maybe we should just not talk about it. It just seems like lunacy. We're in this conversation at a federal level and in all contexts. I'm like, where do we find efficiency? Because we have people that are going homeless. They're being forced into homelessness. And expenses are rising. People are struggling to pay their bills. And meanwhile, if we take this concept, whatever it ends up being, 6 billion-ish, whatever that number is, to imagine for a moment that we live in an environment where we have a whole state capitol where Rep. Gross can go up there and like run the flag up the flagpole and say, alert, alert, that we have a problem here. Here's this expense. And it looks like we need to look through this because some of this is not legitimate. And then to even entertain the notion that there may be some people in Columbus who would give it a pass and simply say, well, it's okay if more and more people end up homeless and struggle and can't afford to pay their bills and everything. we're just so used to paying that expense that's not appropriate and illegitimate that we'll just keep it on the budget. So from that just basic high-level standpoint, it's just the mere notion of entertaining this conversation is no less than infuriating for me.
Jonathan, and the fact that the director of Medicaid can respond to the legislature and say, we don't know what happened, and keep her job. I mean, I'm a little shocked that no one is focusing. We have a director of Medicaid and all the people that work for her underneath. Probably we ought to find out when they knew, how long they've known, and who didn't do anything. I mean, this is why like I tell people, we know it's a big system. We know it's broken. But to hide the problem, like you were saying, Jonathan, and just turn our face and just say, oh, well, we'll just keep on paying. That changed when I became the chair of Medicaid.
I have a question.
I guess I'm too middle class, because I am a hardworking middle class Ohioan. We are not, multimillionaires. We are Dave Ramsey people who watch our pennies, and I consider myself a fiscal hawk over your dollars. And when I see stuff like this, I'm not surprised. It's just that I didn't know how to find it. I'm so thankful that that the person found, the constituent of Representative Davila found that and brought it forward. They found it after we had done the budget, because I asked them. I had a meeting with them last week, and they just said we weren't able. And I'm just so thankful that someone had the guts to be able to bring this forward.
Yeah, that was good. I mean, that's excellent. And I'll let you finish up your question, but we got to follow through on that. We got to get some results. We got to get some results.
So toward that end, the question I have is whether or not the director of Medicaid is subject to FOIA. I'd like to dig into what she knew.
You can FOIA them. If you ask for data, I understand through the Foundation for Government Accountability, who has done we call them public record requests in Ohio. FOIA is usually at the federal level, but the public records requests, they got some data from them, and I'm expecting a letter from them soon about what they received. But they also asked for some data from Ohio Medicaid, and they said that's a data request. We don't have to give that. So they can also delay if you ask. But certainly I'd encourage anyone, if there's information that you want, I would encourage you to ask for it, because I need you to. Remember, we're a government of the people, for the people, and by the people. And I can't know it all. But if you guys have an idea and you find, that's how, the citizen found information. This is, Doge, a lot of the people that did Doge were not paid. They just care. And I need you guys to care. I need you to do these things. So
I don't think it's going to get done unless the citizens doge it. We need, what we need, Brian? We need some kind of like a lobbyist for citizens organization, something like that.
Boy, that sounds good, doesn't it? Really, it's a wonderful idea. Jennifer, I've got a couple questions, if I may. What's the name of the individuals in charge of the Medicaid? What's the director?
The director is Director Maureen Corcoran.
Maureen
She's the director. She was appointed to one department under Celeste back in the 80s. She lobbied for I believe she lobbied for some mental health, something I don't know for sure. You could look up her bio is public on the ohio.gov website. So you could read that.
Oh, she's been there quite a while then, if she's been there since the 80s.
But she was not director. She was appointed by DeWine as the director of Medicaid. Her bugaboo was something called Ohio Rise, which is a whole separate MCO or managed care plan over mental health care, which is very expensive and costing us quite a lot of money. She started 2 new MCOs. She added managed care plans.
So she's been
the other question I have,
definitely been there a while.
You mentioned You mentioned assets. You can't have any more than $2,000 in assets. I thought that was liquid assets, and to me, that's cash or something that can be converted to cash.
Correct.
Is that 2,000 in total assets or just liquid assets?
I believe so. Yes. So like your car can't be worth. I mean, I have not a constituent of mine, but a member reached out to me because their father needs to go into a nursing home, and he has a life insurance policy that's, I don't know, worth $200,000, and Medicaid is requiring them to cash that in to pay for his services. And some people are like, well, Jen, that's not fair. But is it fair that he would have this life insurance policy and that would not go to the state when we're paying $10,000 a month for nursing home care, and that $200,000 would go to his family? I get, guys, look, families work hard for that, but also my parents got long-term care insurance and they paid hefty premiums every single year for that. We have to plan like a 401k. I'm sure Jonathan could talk to us about this, but we have to plan, and that means you sacrifice. I mean, I have a friend who, her family, they were so tight, but they got long-term care insurance. They decided to not take vacations every year because they wanted long-term care, because they wanted to preserve their assets for their children. Those are decisions that we make. We have a bill right now in Medicaid. Well, we need to preserve, what is it called? Family assets or something. That isn't the role of the government to preserve your family assets. You have to plan to preserve your family assets. It isn't the role of Medicaid to step in and preserve family wealth. So
I gotcha.
I would agree with that, Jen.
The other thing too, I'll just hop in here for a second, but some of the other problems with Medicaid wasn't just that you had too many assets. There's other things too, like nursing homes and physicians and stuff just overbilling. Billing for patients that don't exist, died, things like that. Medication, just saying that they're prescribing very expensive medication to people and they're not, but then they're getting reimbursed through Medicaid.
Well,
so this whole umbrella of Medicaid,
that's why my prior authorization amendment matters, because and I'm a provider, I'm an advanced practice nurse. It's so much easier to just write whatever you want. Drug rep came in, whatever you write, you want to try something new. But when you have to write a lower level medication before you try the second level, before you try this third level, that's prior authorization. You have to prove that you use those other ones. Again, we don't like those, but this is a cost containment mechanism available to Medicaid for us to save the taxpayer money. That's the reality. It's government health care that is not insurance. People call it insurance. It's not insurance. It is an entitlement program. Now, let's go back to the Davila issue. Let me be clear. When I worked on this budget, I purposely walled off the aged, blind, and disabled. That $6 million, guys, is in the aged, blind, and disabled category. That doesn't even address the Medicaid expansion in the able-bodied. How much do you think we're going to find over there? We're going to find way more waste, I would guess.
Yeah,
I didn't touch the eight. You guys would have had my head on a platter if I would have cut the age, blind, and my own district would have been like, you are the ogre of the West, Westchester. But I mean, I purposely walled them off, and everybody was so happy that I wasn't going to try. I wasn't going to. You know what it does to a conservative like me? When I find out we're being taken to the bank by the traditional Medicaid category, now I'm mad. Mm-hmm. If we're not spending that money wisely, then don't even complain about the benefits cliff and the working, all of that. When we have lost possibly $6 billion in that category,
it's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. Well, yeah. I know,
Jennifer. Jennifer, I would say that, you've got our contact information as you move forward on this. If you do need some help from good old average citizens, please contact us and we will do the needful.
If you guys feel you need to see something, do the public records request. Do it. Ask her. Write and ask the Department of Medicaid and, CC the attorneys, make sure they know. I mean, all of this should be in front of you. Anything you want to see. You want to see the MCO contracts. How much are they making per member? How are they spending their money? A lot of that is public record. If you look on the Ohio checkbook, but also on the Medicaid website, you can see their contracts. So we've got a lot of work to do.
There is a Medicaid fraud unit too. When I was on the website looking at it and stuff, there is a Medicaid fraud unit, but they don't catch anything. Okay, they catch less than 0.5%. You know, so it's like what's going on here? So if you do find something, you know, then you also have to find a chain of command of who to contact and who's going to enforce this. And I think that's lacking when it comes to government.
Well, you wonder, is that by design? I mean, is it by design that our government is so difficult for you to navigate that you can't help me? Because bureaucracy, remember, unelected bureaucrats and bureaucracy does not like transparency.
No. Transparency, yeah, a lot of people don't like transparency. Let's just skip gears here for a second. Let's move on to something else. All right, you got is this your bill that's banning sexual public displays, or somebody else?
Oh, that is Representative Angie King and Representative Josh Williams. I'm a co-sponsor. We have a lot. I would say we have more than half the caucus are co-sponsors on this bill. This bill just basically says that the things that used to be required to be like lewd acts that had to be in a dark bar and it was adult only, that lewd acts need to be for, you guessed it, adults only. So performers or entertainments who exhibit a gender identity that is different from the performers or entertainers' biological sex, using clothing, makeup, prosthetic, or imitation, genitals, or breasts or other physical markers. They cannot do obscene acts in front of juveniles. Basically, what it does is it takes the stuff that used to be for adults only, and still is, back to a place where no children are going to be exposed to hip gyrations of men or women, half nude or nude.
So if there was a parade, because you see this sometimes in parades, you know, the LGBTQ parade. So, and there would be little kids probably and even if the parents didn't care, it's still illegal, right? Correct.
You are not even, it's not the fact that it's an LGBTQ parade, okay? It's the fact that it's nudity, it's acting like it's a sex act, it's wearing underwear where all of the bumps and bulges of a man can be seen, left nothing to the imagination, or even parts are out, breasts are out. All of and this does exclude, let me be clear, it does exclude breastfeeding moms, and there's provisions in there that women are allowed to still breastfeed in public and things. But children should not be they should not be able to walk down Main Street and see a man gyrating sexual acts on another man or a woman or anything. That kind of stuff needs to return back to an adult only.
So what about drag queen events? Or would those be hindered in like public libraries and stuff, drag queens?
If they are,
because I mean, I don't know if they're going to go to the extent of showing any kind of nudity, but you know, it is pretty crazy that they're, you know, dressing as the opposite sex, and they looked very strange and all that kind of stuff. So I was just wondering if that was part of the bill or not. What bill number is that, by the way?
It is this General Assembly. It is HB 249. Last General Assembly, it was 245, I believe, but this General Assembly, so this is the 136. So if people want to look it up, it's Ohio HB 249, King and Williams. And like I said, I think almost every Republican that even saw it or is worth their weight is a co-sponsor on this bill. So we just need to return adult cabaret back to adult environments. So.
100% agree.
Yeah, 100% agree. Okay, let's see. Let's talk about a couple other things here while we've got you.
Yes.
Let's talk about the Trump tax cuts. You want to talk about that for a minute? How is that going to affect Ohio, and what's going on with it?
Sure. So we know, Joe, that the Trump tax cuts are set to expire. We passed a resolution that, remember, resolution, yes, true, is not a law in Ohio. We can't change the federal Trump tax cuts. But we can encourage our Congress, our congressmen in Ohio. We can send I call them love letters. A resolution is a love letter to Congress going, we need these to continue. Please do not stop the Trump tax cuts. Every single Ohio Democrat, even though some of them helped me when I broke my wrist here, every single Ohio Democrat.
Wait a second. Wait, now you brought it up. You have to show everybody your wrist. Come on, now you just can't mention. What the heck? You got a cast?
I'll get my cast tomorrow.
Oh,
So,
you were hitting a Democrat. I heard you were in a
no,
bar and you got into a
really
fight with a
tough on
Democrat.
us. No.
All right,
So,
go ahead.
yeah, we came to fisticuffs in the legislature voting against the Senate version of the budget this late on Wednesday evening. But so what this means, if the tax cuts expire, first of all, every Ohio Democrat voted against this resolution. Some people are like, oh, it's nothing. Oh, really? If it's nothing, then why did every Democrat vote against it? It is a voice and it is a statement to say, do not let the Trump tax cuts expire. If those expired, okay, these tax cuts save every Ohio family approximately $1,700 in federal taxes. So the Democrats voted against something that's going to cost every single one of their families, unless you're in the low income and you're not paying property income tax federally, which is some people, but not most of us. Every Ohio family is going to pay $1,700 more in federal income tax. I don't know any Ohio family that wants to give more to the federal government. Personally.
No, I don't either. Now, hang on one second. Brian, did you touch your camera? You're not allowed to do that. Are you still with us?
I didn't touch anything.
I lost your picture because now we have this. And so that's proof. You touched your camera. I know you did.
I did not touch anything.
You did. You didn't?
Uh-oh.
Can you...
well,
that's
just
no
keep
good.
me off the air.
Well, the stars
Just put Jennifer on
it. Flag Day was yesterday.
All right, so Brian, just remember we can't see you, okay? So be descriptive when you talk. But, all right, I just happened to catch that. But, all right, so let's get some of you other guys in here. Jonathan, you might have something to say. Go ahead. I don't care. It could be on anything.
I have two things to say. So one of the things that seems to sort of catch attention and resonate on social media in response to some of these ridiculous things that are happening, and of course all over social media, it is people call it the meme wars. It is the war for the hearts and minds and for public perception. There's one that caught my attention. I actually captured and saved it, and I've dropped it a few places. And it's so basically what that means. Sometimes it's a little image with a short blip, just very quickly catch people's attention and make a statement. And this one is, Democrats have one plan: hope Trump fails. That's it. Their only path back to power is betting against America's success. No real vision, no actual leadership, just waiting and praying for the country to lose. Inspiring stuff. It's short and concise, and with a lot of this stuff that's going on, it's like, how can you be in the Democrat Party, what I call the DNC? It's the Democrat Neo-Communist Party, because frankly, I can't just leave it right there. I can find no distinguishable differences between the communist platform and the actions of the Democrat Party. So all this bluster and smoke and mirrors and this Trump this and Trump that, what in the heck? You would think with an entire nation full of, I don't know how many people work or connected to the Democrat Party, but it doesn't seem like anyone anywhere is coming out with hey, we can do this great thing or save people money or reduce taxes or make jobs growth. None of them are talking about anything that I can find other than Orange Man bad.
That seems,
that
how
seems
weird
to be
is
their,
that?
Yeah, that seems to be their main theory right there.
Yeah.
But
Trump derangement syndrome.
It's real. It's real because you even said not one Democrat voted for the Trump
Right.
tax cuts.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's
So
going to help
remove-
their own constituents.
Remove Trump tax cut. Okay, if you don't like and you don't want to support Trump, okay. But how do you justify Democrats, and there are 34 of them, how do you justify not supporting a $1,700 a year federal tax cut that is going to increase all of your constituents' tax bills? How do you answer that? You know, I get tired of politicians who they vote according to, they don't believe their people are awake and they don't believe their people see what's going on. Let me tell you, all Republicans don't always all get it right, but every single Republican who is there on Wednesday, because we've had some people out, injured, sick, and gone, every single Republican voted yes on this resolution. It's HJR 8 in case anybody wants to read it.
All right, I've got. Let me show you something here, Brian. You have something to say? Go ahead. You know what else, Brian?
I do
have one thing to say. Once you're done talking,
leave Jennifer on the.
Yeah, once
leave
you're
Jennifer
done
on there. I need to ask
you
her a
need. You know what you
question.
need to do? You need to boot out and come back in after you get through talking here, and I bet you that'll clear it up.
All right, I'll do
Go
that.
ahead.
Jennifer, is there a basic difference between the House of Representatives and the Senate as it relates to the budget? Are the senators worried about something that is completely different than the House of Representatives? Why? There seems to be a tremendous change.
They did they put the flat tax in there. So we haven't talked about that, but they did put the 2.75. So currently people that are making over $100,000, okay, anybody under 26,000 pays no tax in Ohio at all. And 26 to 100,000 pays 2.75% in Ohio. Everyone over 100,000 pays 3.25 now in Ohio. So in the Senate, they lowered that category. We're trying to get everybody to 2.75 so that it's one flat tax. And it's painful because Democrats and others are like, this is a tax cut for the rich. I get that. I get what you're saying. But we're trying to get to the point where we can abolish property tax. And it's complicated. So in the first year, this will lower
I think you meant income tax there.
Correct. Income tax, Ohio income tax. So the first year lowers anyone over 100,000 to 3.125, and then the next year lowers anyone over 100,000 to 2.75. That way, anybody paying Ohio state income tax is paying 2.75% in Ohio. Then we can start going down for everybody at every level all the time. But we've gone from 9 categories to 5 to 3, and now we're at 2. So now we're going to 1, but it's complicated. It's not that easy, and I know.
Now, what happens to the overall revenue stream for the state because of this flat tax? Are the overall income taxes going down? Or are we collecting the same amount of money just in different amounts from the different age ranges or income ranges?
I don't know how to answer that. It's pretty complicated, but I thought I read, and again, I may be mistaken here, but I thought that it was going to be like, I think it was 535 million the first year, and then the second year it was going to double and be over like 1.2 billion or 1.5 or 1.7.
The reason I asked that, Jennifer, is that Governor DeWine is on the record. We have the video of Governor DeWine saying that school funding is primarily from income tax and property taxes. So
Correct.
If the goal of our legislators, be they the House of Representatives or the Senate, is to eliminate income tax, that tells me then there's going to be a greater dependence on the property taxes to funding these schools, which is going in the wrong direction. And everyone says, "Well, Brian, you're all wrong because the people that have the money They would love to see the property taxes go because they'll make more money. That's not the case, in my opinion. If the moneyed people wanted to eliminate property taxes, they would be flooding us with money. That's the property taxes for the people with the money and with the businesses. That's a cost of doing business to them, where they're going to make out very, very well with a reduction or elimination of the income tax, in my opinion.
I think that you have to also consider, though, Brian, that there is probably going to be an increase in sales tax. And the challenge there, that will happen with the Property Tax Relief Now Act that we are working on at the state level in the budget. We're hoping to get these 5 bills into the budget to give property tax relief, which is projected to reduce property tax for every homeowner $850 in January. Because if we continue on the current trajectory, we're going to have another massive property tax increase. So what we're doing, we've asked gently, every county has a tax commission. They have had the ability to increase sales tax. The reason sales tax is more fair is because, as you well know, there are people who live in places that aren't property tax, they aren't property owners. And they vote for school levies and every other levy, but there is no skin off their back or skin off their teeth or whatever saying you want to use when they vote yes on school levies. If you are going to pay an income tax school levy, which is always a possibility, Ross, my township of Ross, has an income tax school levy, or you are going to pay a sales tax increase, that'll make everyone voting for property tax or tax increases have some skin in the game. Because right now it is imbalanced that every single time a levy is on the ballot, only the person paying property tax is paying for it. And our elderly, as we were talking about a little bit earlier before we went live, they have unrealized gains in their homes. But to say to them, well, your house is now worth $500,000, but they bought it at $75,000, 30, 40, 50 years ago. And now all of a sudden they can't afford their property tax and they have to move. That is really, really cruel in my mind. And so we've got to do something to change the large lion's share of property taxes on the backs of the property owner. I hear what you're saying as far as income tax. The schools will be able to levy income tax, but the state will step out a little bit, and then the school. So we're putting local control back in local control. So if you don't want to live in a place where there's a school levy on your income tax, you choose to live somewhere else. And that's going to be some of the choices of local control. Since we're a massively huge local control state, I still believe that we'll move money around and we'll still pay a large portion of the schools. I still believe that we need to decrease spending at the state level, not in schools per se, but that we need to decrease spending in other areas, like finding $2.4 billion in Medicaid that we would be able to put into property tax reform or income tax reform. So
we would agree.
I hear you there. But along the lines here, I'll throw in 2 cents and then you say something, Brian. But lowering the state income tax, I think, is really, it might drive businesses, to want to come to Ohio. So you would offset some of the income, the revenue generated would offset some of the taxes you're not collecting. I think that's the theory behind it. But as Brian said, then what you're doing is you're pushing the burden on the taxpayers locally. The schools are going to want to have more and more levies. That just can't happen anymore.
But you get to vote on them. You still get to vote locally.
You still get to vote, but you know how they play the game. They'll do it in August. They'll do it in May, with 3-4% of the people show up to vote. That kind of game they play.
But if it's sales tax and income tax, then there's more skin in the game than just the homeowner. So you're going to have more people caring and more people voting because they care. And if you have someone living in a place that they don't own and they know that they're going to raise their own income tax or their own sales tax, they may think a little bit harder about voting yes.
Yeah, hopefully, but I think we're at the point where, yeah, I don't know, Brian, maybe you agree, but I think we're at the point where you can't get any more yeses. We just can't go any higher.
Well, I mean,
we've got a
I don't
lower
mean to
property
monopolize
tax.
this, but there's I know there's pending legislation on the budget commission, and I've been talking about budget commissions for a long time, and I've always thought they were the watchdog for the taxpayers to guard against excessive taxation, but they're really nothing more than a rubber stamp for the most part. I guess Geauga's a little bit better. No one ever thinks about giving money back to the taxpayer, and unless we do something to curb the spending and the accumulation, the massive amount of accumulation of cash in these taxing authorities, nothing is going to change, Jennifer. I asked the question, do we need 611 school districts in the state of Ohio?
Can I give you 5 bills? Yeah. Amended House Bill 186, amended House Bill 129, Sub Bill 309, local homestead exemptions. We will change. Are you guys still there?
Yes.
Yeah,
okay,
I can hear you and see you.
I lost you. Okay.
Oh, no.
We have an option to do local homestead exemptions, which the state would continue to do the homestead exemption, but then local government will be given the option to double that. So that'll be totally up to the local control. It won't come from the state. It will be the local area. Inside millage empowers Ohio voters by eliminating most unvoted taxes to local governments. I think this is what, Brian, you were touching on earlier when we first started. And then an alternative to local government funding, it reduces the over-reliance on property tax by encouraging alternative funding mechanisms at the local level. So they can increase their county sales tax, use tax by 1% if approved by the majority of the Board of County Commissioners, and only if approved by the voters at the ballot. So they're going to have, guys, this is a hard decision. It's going to be hard. It's going to be a fight. It's going to be shaken down and sifted, but we can't stay the way we are today. And you're right. I've been fighting. I love, you guys posted this, I believe, and I reposted it on my X feed. It is a farce to say that we keep balancing our budget, because every time, I love whoever put that on, it's probably you, Brian, or you, Joe. We increase our spending every year, and then we tell all the Ohio taxpayers, but we balanced our budget. Right. We just keep increasing the spending, and then we don't spend more than we increased it. Hello?
Yeah, I think in the last 5 or 6 years, the spending has increased 35 to 40% when we ran the numbers. We're now at, $100 billion or something like that?
I am unaware of an every 2-year budget in Ohio that has not increased. I am unaware. Ron Hood, God rest his soul, he passed away last month. He voted no on every single budget because there was an increase every single time. Now, if there's significant property tax reform, it's going to be really hard for me to vote no on this budget when it comes back, when the conference committee is done.
Let me ask you a question.
I'll interject something really quickly.
One second. I'll hand it off to you, but I got to say this before I forget it. There is workings within the State House now that they want to make it more difficult to do a constitutional amendment change. Raising it to 60% or something. If they do anything, if you guys do anything at the State House right now, it would not affect what Brian and the abolishing the tax.
And I don't think, that's local.
Because they've already started this.
Yeah.
So you guys can't come in and squash them. You could squash any future.
Hey, it's tough enough already, Joe.
Yeah.
It's hard
But
enough
then
to,
I'm just wondering
change it.
if they can only crush future events with Ohio, amendments, constitutional amendment changes. Well, what if this takes a year before they get the signatures?
And Joe, I believe what you're talking about is local elections only. I don't believe they're state.
Okay.
I believe they're local elections. So that would help you when it comes to school levies and things like that. It would increase the threshold at the local level. They have to
Okay.
work harder to get more votes, but not at the state level. I'm almost positive that it is not the state, it's local elections.
It
And
should be.
county.
It should be 60% for any school levies. Absolutely.
That is where I believe we're changing, and I wonder if that's in. I don't think that's one of the bills. I don't believe, but we do have a bill like that in there. But it's local elections and county elections, not the state elections.
Okay.
So
Good.
that's why I think that is actually pretty good. So make sure you read into that before you write write an X post.
Okay.
Jonathan,
Duly
I'm going to
noted.
let
So-
you wrap it up with her with a couple questions and stuff like that, and then we do have Andrew King joining us.
I
Okay.
saw his picture pop in and out.
All right. We're looking forward to that part of the conversation. So, two things. One is, I have to go back to my notes here. So, Joe, recommendation, get a pen and a notepad. It keeps me focused on all the different subjects that we
I
cover.
know. I need to
For
do
those
that.
who are not following me yet on X, two profiles. I have a personal profile. It's J.R. Broadbent. That's first initial J, middle initial R, and my last name you see spelled on the screen. I also run Assemble X Ohio. I'm going to post an article that was published by John Mara from Lake County. John has a great article addressing the issue of taxation, how we fund things like public education. You'll find it there. I think it's a well-written article. I have a lot of people who send me snippets of interesting and useful information. Somebody actually took a picture. I'm not sure what the newspaper publication was, but it was John Mara's article. Took a little work for me. I kind of zoomed in enough. I was able to read it and right away sent a message to John asking for a copy. He has provided a digital copy and use authorization. I'll publish that on those profiles on X. The other thing, going back to long-term care, because that came up, it took me a minute to look it up. I remembered something from all those years ago when I worked on Wall Street. I was required to sit in on some training, and not everybody will know this, but Ohio is part of a program called Long-Term Care Partnership Program. It started in states like Connecticut, Indiana, New York, and other places. Ohio is now part of it. You should look that up because it pertains to exactly what we were talking about. About 10 minutes ago, the idea of asset protection and that whole $2,000 threshold, as people work to navigate that and make sure they stay compliant with Medicaid and Medicare, long-term care partnership is in Ohio, and I think not many people know about it. I'm far from expert on it, but I knew enough to bring it into the conversation. That's it.
Yeah.
That's it.
That's what I wanted to say.
You guys rock, man. This hour flies by. I am so honored to be with you. And,
Well, the honor is us, and thank you very much. We'll let you get back to your. I know you have a steak. You said you had a steak that's just waiting there
He's
for
got
you.
a steak warming up there.
I do, and I got to go back to my husband, who is a great dad, and I just want to say Happy Father's Day again to all of you and everyone listening, and just to thank you for just being strong men who stand for liberty and freedom and all that you do. I know you don't do it for the money here because, you know, that doesn't come very
Because we're losing money. That's why. This
But
costs us money.
I just thank you for being a voice for the people, and I just want to say
Well, thank you. Thank you. You're in a high position where you can actually make changes, and we appreciate, your guts, and you're just a wonderful example of what a state representative should be, and we appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you. It's my honor.
And
So
we'll give you next
Thanks,
month
Red
off.
Rose.
We'll give you next month off for being such a
All
good
right.
state.
All right. So I get next month off. That
You
would
get
be
next month
awesome.
off. But you told us
All
you
right,
needed
so
it
we'll
off anyhow.
Maybe
So
see you in
all right.
August or September then.
You come on anytime you want. Anytime.
All right.
But you told
All
me
right,
you had to
guys.
have next month off, so I'm going to give it to you.
All right, guys. God bless. We'll talk to you soon.
God bless. Take care. Thank you very much.
God bless.
All right. Andrew, are you out there? There you
Yes,
are.
sir. How are you?
I can see you. I can see you. You can run, but you can't hide, okay?
You got that right. Thanks
Because
for
we will-
having me on here.
We will find you. We will
That's
find
right. You will. You absolutely will.
All right. It's good to have you on, Judge. It's good to have you on tonight.
Well,
Appreciate it.
well, thanks. Oh, it's my pleasure. Thanks for having me. It's great.
So, a couple of things here. First of all, you are in the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals, right? You're at number
That's
5
right.
in the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals. And for people that don't have a clue what that means, which is myself until I looked it up, that I think is the map of the Court of Appeals. And you're number 5. Does that look right? So you're right in the middle of the state?
That does. That
Okay.
looks correct to me.
So that's your jurisdiction, that's your area. So anybody who has a lower level court, or they some type of a court problem, they didn't feel they got a fair shake with it, then they can go and appeal it to you or
Right.
your team. I'm sure there's several of you at least.
There's 6 of us.
Okay, 6 of you. So then you may or may not listen to that case, but if you do listen to it, it sounds an awful lot like you're part of the Ohio Supreme Court. I mean, it sounds like that's exactly what they do. But I think that you guys, are just a part of Ohio and stuff, and you don't oversee the entire state, I guess. But so that's good. So that's what you're doing right now. And I should also preface by saying that you are one of the judges running for the Ohio Supreme Court seat against Jennifer Bruner.
That is
And
correct.
you want to get rid of that Democrat, which is a good thing. We want to see it. So
Absolutely.
Andrew, give us a little background on yourself here, just a minute or two. Fill us in. Woo us with your with a little background information about yourself here. Pretend you're auditioning.
Well, I mean, if this is like American Idol, I would be one of the people given the hook. I'm sorry to say I did not inherit my mom's singing skills.
Yeah.
But, well, I mean, for me, I came at the law as something that I didn't grow up in a family of lawyers. I didn't grow up thinking I could be a judge. My dad was a high school dropout. My mom was a college dropout. She later became a teacher. And my dad, they met as deputy sheriffs. And then later he became a business owner. And he passed on when I was in 8th grade. So, I grew up, was really the first person in my family to go to college in any sort of traditional sense. I was, as far as I know, the only person anywhere in my family go to law school. So, I mean, all that was new. There was no lawyers in my family, no judges in my family. I think I have like a distant uncle that was a sheriff in Perry County, but I mean, like long before me, I never met him. So no one ever involved in elected politics. So it was all new. So, it was an opportunity for me to do it all for the first time. And, there was a lot of learning along the way of what to do, what not to do. Like a lot of people in life, right? You have setbacks, you have disappointments, you have things that don't work out. And, I was fortunate enough to get an opportunity to run and for the Court of Appeals. So, I mean, backing up just to here, I worked for a Court of Appeals judge for 2 years, and I thought, I really enjoy this. I want to do this. So I had an opportunity to run against an incumbent Democrat, and that's, one of the setbacks I mentioned. The first time I ran, didn't work out. It was 2018 when we lost both Supreme Court seats and a bunch of judgeships around the state. But then, when you do that, you work hard, it can pay off. So then when I ran again the second time, I won the primary, beat a different incumbent, and I've been a Court of Appeals judge ever since. So, I mean, that's sort of where I come from. That's my background. My wife and I we met at OSU. We were married young, and we'll be married 30 years next year, so 29 this year.
Congratulations on that. Wow.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. So, what's nice about having a partner like that is I was a night student at Capitol. I went to work during the day, went to school at night, studied on the weekends. And then after I was done, my wife actually went back to school to become a nurse. So she got her RN, BSN, is now a nurse practitioner. So it was about a decade there that we took turns supporting each other and helping raise the kids. So, that's all of that sort of makes me who I am today and how I got to where I'm at today. So
that's awesome. Yeah,
I don't know if that wowed you, but that's the story.
That's quite an awesome story. So Brian is still trying to figure out his camera, but hey, I want to ask you a question here. So
technical difficulties.
What? Let me ask you a question here. So you would be taking over Bruner's seat, okay? Now she's the only Democrat that's on the Ohio Supreme Court right now. The only Democrat.
Right.
We got all Republicans, and we got to get rid of that last Democrat, okay? Now, you're not the only one. There's like 4 or 5 judges. I can't even remember how many. There's like 4 or 5 that are trying to vie for that one seat. And one of the most interesting ones is Pat Fisher, because Pat Fisher is already on the Supreme Court. He is a Ohio Supreme Court justice right now. But he wants to take that other seat, and that would give him, because he's almost at the age of 70 where he has to retire, so that would give him another 4 years beyond what he has now. So he could extend into that. Now, here's something that you said in regards to Fisher. I just want to quote this. But you were saying that his lack of prosecution experience is a real concern. And then you go on to say that a majority of the Supreme Court judges who have prosecution felony criminal cases, I guess prosecutorial experience, so to speak. Why is that? Why is that so important for somebody who wants to be on the Ohio Supreme Court?
Well, I mean, I would say at my Court of Appeals, about 50% of the cases are criminal cases. And almost all of those are felony cases, which means some county prosecutor's office has brought those. And I mean, you have longtime county prosecutors and Joe Dieters and Megan Shanahan and Dan Hawkins. And, as someone who's been in those rooms to make decisions on whether or not to charge someone, worked on cases, tried cases, and, helped others prepare for cases, I understand what goes into it. I understand what it's like to sit across the table from a victim in a terrible, terrible, terrible case and try to get that child victim to talk about what went on. So, given the fact that roughly half of the cases in my court are felony criminal cases, having that background, on the prosecutor side of working with law enforcement, working with the victims and victims advocates, and knowing how to put those cases together and what goes into charging decisions, I think is invaluable experience. It helps bring a perspective to those cases that you wouldn't otherwise have if all you've ever done are civil cases or been a government lawyer or whatever. So I think that sort of thing does matter, because you understand it in a way that someone that's never done it understands it. Excuse me.
I got you. All right, let's open it up. You guys want to ask the judge a question? Go ahead.
I've got questions and comments. So the first thing is, to our audience, bear with us. Joe actually, if you didn't hear this, is actually just returned from vacation just before starting this show. So our start on the technology side is a little bit different than normal. And it turns out, so normally there are several of us that like to monitor the chat room, and unfortunately we missed some. I see that some people commented during the Rep. Gross segment, and I apologize to you. We didn't actually include those, we missed those. And that goes on all of us. In the future, we try to do our best, please know, to get your questions answered when we have opportunities to speak with people like Rep. Gross. That's my first comment. The next thing is, Mr. King, thank you for joining us. We appreciate you coming on and telling us about yourself. From my perspective, your story, I like. It resonates with me. I want to say you kind of blue-collared your way through law school and onto a bench, which I think is awesome. It gives you a different perspective, I think, than a lot of the sort of political gravy train, easy deal into judgeship. So personally, I find your story compelling, but I have a comment that's coupled with a question. I work in finance. Sure. I came from a Wall Street background, and I've watched since 2006, at least, in my realm, in the world of finance, as the left political, I call it the long, slow march, the march of communism into the pillars of our society. I see it in finance, and I actually talk about it a lot. And I've actually made the comment several times that I think that the world of finance, if we get back to freedom, free market economy, I think finance is going to be the second to the last pillar of society to right itself and get back to business as usual. And I think the very last will be legal and judiciary. There is so much, in my opinion, looking at these judges with these ludicrous rulings and just anti-constitutional. Actually, I think some are rabidly anti-America and anti-West and have never picked up or ignored the constitutions, state and federal. I am I'm very concerned that we must do a better job of putting people on the bench who care about our great nation, the freedoms that we enjoy, our liberties, and our constitutions. So I'd like to ask your feedback on your value system and how much you value and how much fight you have and willingness to get onto the bench and fight for the conservative values that Ohio holds dear.
Well, I appreciate that. And I mean, the reason that I am running for the Supreme Court is, it sounds like you, I mean, I've seen a lot of what's gone on in the judiciary. I mean, not even just in Ohio, but, nationwide over the last 4, 5, 6 years. And I suspect if you were able to get President Trump on this podcast, he would tell you that he's got a newfound appreciation for a fair, unbiased judiciary and a judiciary that operates by the rule of law. So, I think we've got plenty of examples. I mean, everyone, you and your audience can think of something recent, far away, of just a judge legislating from the bench, substituting their decision for somebody else's decision that is the rightful decision maker, and trying to create policy from the bench, and that which should happen at the legislature or sometimes, on the executive branch. So, and I think your point is exactly, and what I understood to be kind of to be underlying your point there is the best way that we can ensure we have judges that are faithful to the Constitution, to the rule of law, to our wonderful system of checks and balances and adherence to the Constitution, is by putting the right judges into those seats. Again, I'm sure everyone could think of a situation where a president or state Supreme Court justice or local judge has been put in a situation. You think, well, they'll do the right thing when they're put in the spot, and then they don't. So that the best thing that we've seen at the federal level is presidents putting people like Justice Alito, Justice Thomas on the bench to sort of right the ship judicially, and we've begun to see that at the state level by putting constitutional conservatives on the bench. And the best way we do it in Ohio is we unelect those folks that don't share those values and view the judiciary just as another opportunity to exercise their personal preference under the guise of being fair. So we unelect those people and we replace them. And that's, I think that's why I'm running. That's why I'm hoping to give folks that choice, that when they're looking at candidates, they can say, well, here's somebody who will do the right thing. I mean, part of being a judge is you have to adhere to your oath and have courage and say that's right. when it's unpopular, or that's wrong when it's unpopular. And that's all grounded in the law, the Constitution, the statutes of the state of Ohio. So it's kind of a long answer. So if I didn't quite hit it, I'm happy to be a little bit more specific.
I think it was fine. Brian, did you have a question for the judge?
Yes. What have you seen in our society, the times from the time you've been on the bench? Have you seen a drastic change in our society as far as the immorality, of our society? And we basically say that we're an ungodly, uneducated, and immoral society. In your role as judge, would you agree with that assessment?
I mean, we certainly are folks that need grace. We're folks that need forgiveness. We're folks that need, guidance from God, from a higher power. So, I mean, we're all imperfect and fallen. So, I mean, I think that much is true. We see those sorts of people come in. At our level, we're not sentencing people face to face, where you get the opportunity to see them be remorseful and say they're remorseful. But, by and large, I mean, we, in my 15 counties, it between, what we see with the drug epidemic, and other contributing factors. I mean, there's certainly a lot of very serious crime against women and children that go on, even in rural counties and places you would think that wouldn't happen. So, I do think we as a society could certainly do a better job, helping folks that have gone down a bad path, that have, made some mistakes, have fallen. And then those folks that are, unrepentant. I mean, one of the options obviously is you put them away and then you incapacitate them by imprisoning them, and they can't hurt anyone else. So, so that sometimes has to be the way that it goes. So
would you also concur with the statement that number one problem in our society would be the breakdown of the traditional family structure, and to go along with that the seemingly the ineffectiveness of our church to talk about the traditional morals that we may have had 50, 100, 150 years ago no longer seem to apply to our society, and the churches have no impact, it seems like.
I mean, I certainly have seen just, in the community and family and friends and, classmates and schoolmates that, folks are not as oriented towards civic religious organizations as they used to be. And that certainly has an impact. And I think to your first point about the family, I mean, where we see an overwhelming number of our, permanent custody cases where the state is taking the child away from usually both parents, but sometimes it's just one. And that's usually there has been significant failures of those parents, and they're not married. And there's usually children out of wedlock. There's often drug use. There's all sorts of accompanying issues. So, I as a personal matter, I mean, as a judge, there's kind of limited things that I can do, when it comes to trying to facilitate folks to be good family members. But, I think it matters. And I think a lot of our juvenile courts around the state do try to do just that and try to help parents be better parents. And then there are success stories where folks get clean, follow the program, work with the social worker. But, again, to your earlier point, it's all sort of downstream of the fact that there's a general coarseness in, I think, society and a lack of family cohesion. So, I definitely think it's a contributing factor without a doubt in my mind.
Hey, Andrew,
thank you very much.
Let me ask you a question here. So now we're moving into the phase with you that, you want to be a Ohio Supreme Court justice. So you want to take the next step. I think that would be the next step from where you're at. You're an appellate judge in the 5th District. I think the next step up would be for the Ohio Supreme Court. So what differentiates you from some of these other judges that are trying to fight for that position? You know, what advantages do you have, or selling points or whatever?
Well, I mean, to sort of your earlier point when you asked me to introduce myself, I believe very firmly in hard work, and that, I mean, there's always the hand of God, fate, providence that it plays in everyone's life, and sometimes doors are shut for you because something else opens. But at the end of the day, if you're not willing to put the work in, you're not willing to do what is necessary, then you don't deserve what you may get, and you certainly are unlikely to appreciate it. So I mean, that's the ethic I've taken with me going to law school. I mean, like I mentioned, I worked during the day. I had like a Saturday job at a call center. I was a TA at a point, and I still did. I was I worked while doing that. I did other extracurricular activities. Graduated well in my class, and it's through that hard work. So I think, Joe, just to bring it to a finer point, is this weekend was the 71st different county that I was in since the beginning of the year. I think I hit 54 different Lincoln dinners as part of that. And I've been talking to your colleagues, been talking to party chairs, been out there talking to voters. And I think that's, if you're going to be successful statewide, you have to replicate something like what Sharon Kennedy and Bernie Moreno have done. Is you got to be out there and you got to be talking to the voters. You got to have a presence, and they got to know you, and they got to want to vote for you. And that's true whether it's in the suburbs or the rural areas. It doesn't matter. You got to do it. And then just as a general matter, my background, just personally, having had to sort of work for that, for my wife having to work for the things that she got, and having worked as a prosecutor, worked in state and local government, I feel like I do bring a perspective to this that a lot of other folks just don't have and just don't bring to it. And I firmly believe it's complementary to what some of the strengths that other justices on the court may have. So, aside from the hard work, aside from the background and the philosophical belief of being a constitutional conservative, it's just my professional background of having touched so many different things, and whether it's state, federal, civil, criminal, local government, private. I've done a lot, and I think it's helped me as a Court of Appeals judge to have some familiarity of most of what comes in front of me, and that's obviously something I would take with me up to the Supreme Court.
Oh, I got you. So, yeah, it's got to be tough for judges. Judges by nature are not politicians. You're not out there tooting your own horn or anything like that. The politicians are like, give me the microphone and let me go. Judges are kind of like, well, let me just sit over in the corner here a little bit. And I'm not saying that's you, but I'm just saying that they're a little bit more, by themselves or whatever. But I mean, you've got a wonderful personality. And I ran into you at the Lincoln Day, and you're out there, talking to people, politicking, doing what you can. I mean, that to me is the most important thing. When I get a phone call from somebody, a politician or something, or a judge, that is just so much more impressive to me than the resume, But although I did get a resume from one judge, and the paper that it was on must have cost like $10 a sheet. I couldn't believe it. I wouldn't even want to touch the paper. It was like soft cotton. It was magnificent. But then I was like, why are you doing this? But anyhow, hey, let me get Jonathan in here. Ask you a question, a philosophical, strong question.
All right,
all yours.
I'm ready.
Okay, so I think the only thing left on my mind, and you can comment on this or not. I'll leave that up to you. I'm fishing around for more information about how we, the people of Ohio average citizens, can work to right the ship. And I've actually just recently, this is an area that's unfamiliar to me, so bear with me as I sort of navigate my question. I'm very curious about how rogue or bad judges may be removed from the bench. And what I've learned so far is there is a mechanism or process to go to the Ohio Supreme Court and complain effectively about other judges in Ohio. So, for instance, if somebody exceeds their authority from the bench, or think that it's a bad ruling because there's political favoritism or that sort of thing, I'm wondering if you have comments about that process, and if you have any recommendations for those of us out here who are new-ish to paying attention to the judiciary.
Sure. No, I'm happy to do my best to answer that as simply and straightforward as I can. So I would start by saying if it's about a particular case and how a particular case was handled or a particular outcome, my advice would, not while the case is ongoing, but when it's sort of reached a point where the case is done and it's not in the judge's hands anymore. I mean, we, as Joe mentioned, we are elected officials. Part of the reason I think Ohio has persisted in electing judges is so there's some accountability back to the people, and that we are reflective of the communities from which we come from and then we serve. So on things like that, I would just ask. I mean, I've had a couple of times where folks have asked, either, complimenting or criticizing, and the person may walk away not convinced that my decision was right on that, but at least I've given them the opportunity to ask, and I've had the opportunity to explain why I did it. Because occasionally, and I've had this happen a few times, where you might decide the decision differently if you were sitting in the trial judge's seats, but that's not our job to just be a Monday morning quarterback on everything. So that's sometimes the answer is like, hey, maybe I would have done things differently, but that's not my role as an appellate judge. For more serious misconduct, I serve on the Board of Professional Conduct, which is the body that hears a lot of those complaints. And I think we've had at least one, if not two, judicial complaints since I've been there. So, I mean, there is a mechanism where you can file a grievance. It goes, to a committee or kind of an ethics prosecutor that reviews it, and they can file a complaint. And then there's a hearing process and possible testimony, and then it would come to us as the board to make a recommendation of whether there was misconduct, and then whether or not what the sanctions should be, and then we're reviewed by the Ohio Supreme Court, which gets the final say. So I mean, if you do think it is something unethical, and sometimes judges mess up, right? I mean, we're people. I think there's been some cases of judges on social media are doing this, that, and the other thing, and then they get a public reprimand. Hey, you weren't supposed to do that. Don't do that. But there's certainly more serious cases where there's been misconduct on the behalf of family members, or financial misconduct, or things like that may warrant something more severe. Mistreating litigants, we've had a couple of judges in the last few years lose their seat from just improper courtroom decorum and just not handling things right. And then the third thing, that if you are a litigant in a case and you think that the particular judge has some sort of bias, or has said something during the course of a campaign or during an open court, that you think that judge should not hear that your case in front of the case that's going on in front of that judge, you can actually file what's called an affidavit of disqualification with the Chief Justice and say, hey Chief, I don't think this particular judge should hear this case because of all these reasons why the judge might be biased or appear to be biased or whatever. And every once in a while the chief will take a judge off the case and force that judge to stand down and another judge to come along. So, are any of those solutions perfect? No. I mean, they all have their ills that they're trying to cure, and there's certainly gaps in each way. But the three together do a fairly good job of I think, electoral accountability, responsibility of the Supreme Court, the Board of Professional Conduct, and then being disqualified in particular cases. I think covers a lot. Not perfect, but I think it does cover a lot.
Andrew, let me ask you one last question for tonight, and it is Father's Day, so happy Father's Day to you and everybody else here. So if you're on the Court of Appeals right now, and what do you guys do when there's like three are saying yay and three are saying no, how do you reconcile that? Or do you guys sit down like as a group and just hash it out and get ideas from each other? Or or do you work independently? What is the process on that?
Well, if I'm coming up against time, just cut me off, and if I'm going too long. But I'll try to give you a thorough explanation here without boring you with lawyer procedural stuff. So the first instance in which folks attempt to persuade us and say, hey, the trial court committed an error below, you should do something about it, is through briefing. So that we get a brief from the person who filed the appeal, we get a brief from the person who typically won below and says, hey, one side says, hey, you should do something and reverse it and send it back. The other side says, no, this is perfectly fine. So we read those, and then on a particular day, there's an oral argument where attorneys, we've had some people that represent themselves come in, so it can be people, will argue to us. So every side gets 15 minutes, and they can make the legal arguments that they think we need to hear. And on those days, although there's 6 of us on the court, we sit in panels of 3. So the Ohio Supreme Court, all 7 justices sit at once and hear the case. The U.S. Supreme Court's the same way. Intermediate Court of Appeals, it's a random assignment of usually 3 judges on the panel from how many ever judges serve on the court. And so we'll hear those arguments, and then we'll go back and we'll talk about it. And we'll say, hey, this is what I think. We kind of go around in order. Usually when I'm the presiding judge, I'll kind of dictate the order and all that, and we have an opportunity to talk about it. Somebody's going to start writing it up, and then we circulate it, and then even sometimes then we'll say, hey, well, I'm not sure about this, or let's rethink this. So there is a lot of discussion and back and forth, and the same basic thing happens at the Ohio Supreme Court. As a Court of Appeals judge, as you indicated earlier, we do very similar things to what the Ohio Supreme Court does. So we when a justice has a conflict, we could sit there. So I last year got to actually sit for Justice Fisher, and the same thing. We hear the arguments, we go back in the room, and we talk about them, and we all sort of say, here's how we think it's going to be. An opinion gets written up, we circulate it, and then we're agreeing with it or disagreeing with it. So typically, at least if 2 of us agree, then it goes forward. And I've written dissents. I've been on other cases where the judge says, hey, the other 2 got it wrong, and then the Supreme Court may take it. So I had a case recently where I essentially wrote separately and said, hey, in so many words, this is something maybe the Supreme Court should look at, and then they took it. So so we may all agree, but then we still may write separately. So that's typically how we handle making a decision. And then if we have some disagreement about the way the case is written up or drafted, is we can then write separately, or even just say you just got it wrong, you just blew it.
Hey, I want to say thanks again. The applause. I don't know why we're applauding. No, get that out of here. But anyhow, thank you very much. So it's not like I was told. I was told that you guys just go back there and like flip a coin or something, and then it's like heads, win, tails. But thank God it's not that. Hey, thanks a lot.
No, it's not.
Yeah, appreciate your time very much. Thanks, guys. Thanks to the Peanut Gallery here. Say, Lou, happy Father's Day.
Thank
everybody.
you, Judge Gig. Appreciate it very much.
Yes,
thank you,
Judge.
Thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you very much for coming out. Really appreciate it. Thank you for taking the time.
Oh,
tonight.
thank you.
And good luck.
And I always happy, as I said, as elected official, we do have responsibility to talk to the folks, and the judiciary and the whole aspect of the courts can be mystifying. So I think it's incumbent upon us to demystify it as much as we can. So I appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you.
Do.
Yeah, thank you again. We appreciate it. All right, everybody.
Thanks.
See you later. Have a good night. Talk to you soon.
Bye. Good night, all.
Bye, Joe.